The movie begins by showing a scene from the past where Tessa's mom Carol makes her dad Richard leave their home. This happened because he had problems with drinking and lost his job. Tessa, when she was younger, tried to stop her dad from leaving, but he still went away in the present time. Tessa and Hardin find Richard on the streets and bring him back home. Richard is very happy to see his daughter again, and they have a cheerful conversation during dinner. He mentions that Tessa is a good cook, like her mom. Richard explains that he tried to contact Tessa and send her gifts, but he believes her mom didn't let her know about it. Hardin is not pleased with this situation because he doesn't trust Richard, especially after hearing his rude comments at the dinner table. Tessa takes Hardin aside to talk privately and asks him to be supportive of her giving her father another chance. Hardin admits that he doesn't trust Richard and wants to protect Tessa, but she tells him that she doesn't need his protection. Later, Hardin talks to Richard alone and offers him money, thinking Richard is here for that reason. However, Richard declines the money and explains that he wants to have a good relationship with his daughter. He acknowledges that Hardin has reasons not to trust him but asks for a chance. Tessa goes to the park with Landon, who is a Hardin stepbrother, and they talk about her plans to move to Seattle. Hardin arrives and overhears part of their conversation. He remarks that Landon seems to know more about Tessa's plans than he does when Landon leaves. He asks Tessa when she's going to move. She tells him it's happening in a week. She explains that she didn't know if he would return, so she didn't tell him earlier. Tessa believes this move is a great opportunity and had hoped Landon would come along, but Hardin tells her that he wanted to go to London with her too and wanted to tell her earlier. Though it doesn't matter now, Tessa says they'll talk about this another time because she has to go to class. When Hardin returns home, he calls his mother, Trish, who asks about Tessa's plans since Vance informed her, becomes angrier, feeling like everyone knows about the situation except him. Later, he goes to a club with Richard, where they end up in a fight with a man. This man made disrespectful comments about Tessa after seeing a picture they were sharing. Tessa gets a call from the bartender and goes to pick them up later that night. Hardin apologizes to her because she's upset with him. He explains they got into a fight because the man was saying things about. The next morning, Richard talks to Tessa. He mentions that since she's moving, he'll also leave the house. She tries to make him stay, but he already has a ride arranged, so Tessa gives him her number and asks him not to disappear again after Richard leaves. Hardin and Tessa have another argument. Hardin asks if she'll send him away next, and she explains that moving to Seattle is her dream. She thinks it would be wonderful if he came along, but he says he can't live a flashy life there, and he doesn't have much in Seattle except her, which he thinks isn't enough. Tessa gets upset and tells him that's his problem and he can't stop her. Later, she goes to Vance Publishing and Kimberly offers her to live with them when they move to Seattle. Kimberly tells her that Vance offered a job to Hardin in Seattle, a job that could be whatever he wants. However, Hardin turned down the offer. Tessa talks to Hardin about the job, and he explains he didn't want it and didn't know she was moving there at the time. They realize they needed to communicate more to make their relationship work. Tessa and Hardin spend a weekend at the lake house with Hardin's dad, stepmom, and stepbrother. They have a good time, and Hardin connects more with his stepfamily. Tessa talks to Landon and admits she's having doubts about moving away, but he advises her to pursue her dreams. He believes that if Hardin truly loves her, he'll find a way to be with her later that night. They go out to a restaurant for dinner. Hardin meets his old friend Liliana, and they seem to have a strong connection, which makes Tessa feel a bit jealous. Hardin goes to sit with his friend while they're all getting ready to order at the table. A waiter named Robert comes over to take their order. He seems to be paying extra attention to Tessa and tries to flirt with her. Hardin comes back to the table to prevent any flirting. Back at the lake house, everyone else is in different places, so Tessa and Hardin end up alone. They spend some romantic time in a hot tub afterward. Hardin asks Tessa if she's moving to Seattle for Trevor and if she ever had feelings for him. Tessa admits she had some feelings for at one point. Upon hearing this, Hardin gets upset and leaves. When Tessa tries to reach out to him, he tells her he's out with Lillian. Tessa decides to go out as well. She meets Robert, who invites her to join them as they're staying late at the hotel. Tessa and Robert chat casually. Hardin shows up at the hotel with Lillian. Lillian talks about Tessa's move to Seattle and expresses support for her decision. During their talk, Tessa learns that Lillian is a lesbian and already has a girlfriend. This surprises Tessa when Hardin suggests leaving. Tessa decides to stay eventually. She leaves the hotel with Robert. She apologizes for leading him on, and he gives her his number, suggesting they could connect when she's in the city. When Tessa returns home, she finds Hard unpacking. He's really mad after finding Robert's phone number among Tessa's things. He believes that despite Tessa saying she sees Robert as a friend, the waiter had different intentions. When Tessa asks if his anger is about her moving away, He accuses her of getting a job only because Vance favors her. Tessa gets extremely angry. Hardin insists that she won't give up the job for him. They argue more and end up leaving the lake house. And then early in the city, Hardin talks to Vance, who tells him that he didn't show Tessa any favoritism and that she got the job based on her skills and talent. Hardin returns home, and Tessa has already left for Seattle. He finds her journal among the things she left behind, where she wrote about the pain she felt from their relationship. Tessa starts her regular work routine in Seattle, and after some days without contacting Hardin, she finally calls him. Initially, he hangs up when he hears a woman's voice in the background. But he calls her back right away and explains it was his training instructor. He joined boxing classes to manage his anger without directing it toward people. After this, they make up and start calling each other regularly. Tessa talks with Kimberly and Vance one night. They share that they are both expecting a baby back at home. Hardin dreams about Tessa cheating on him with Robert, make him feel very uncomfortable. So he decides to visit Seattle. Tessa is surprised and happy when he suddenly shows up after saying hi to everyone. They go to Tessa's room to put Hardin's bag away. He gives back her journal and admits that he didn't mean to read it, but he couldn't stop himself. Hardin feels sorry for the pain Tess experienced and apologizes for causing her suffering. Tessa explained she didn't want him to read it, but Hardin shows his regret and self-discussion for his actions. They share a gentle kiss, but Hardin remembers his dream and steps back, saying they shouldn't keep Kimberly and Vance are waiting during dinner. Tessa talks about her concerns about their relationship with Kimberly. Kimberly reassures her that relationships can be complicated, but believes that Tessa and Hardin can overcome challenges. In the middle of the night, Tessa wakes up and finds the other side of the bed empty. She looks for Hardin and finds him boxing in the gym. She asks if she did something wrong as he hasn't interacted much with her since arriving. Eventually, Hardin talks about his dream. Explaining that he can't get the thoughts out of his head, he admits that he's been thinking Tessa should be with someone else to make things easier for her. Tessa assures him that she only wants to be with him, and he shouldn't worry at breakfast. The next morning, Hardin gets a call from his mother, and he steps away to answer it. Kimberly tells Tessa that his mother is getting married later. When Tessa brings up the topic, she says that if Hardin doesn't want to take her with him, she understands. Hardin responds by saying he's not planning to go, but if he does, he'll take her alone. He promises to think about it. Hardin leaves Seattle, and when he comes back home, he finds Richard there, battered and bruised. Richard explains that he owes money to certain people who beat him up. Hardin offers Richard his watch, telling him to sell it to pay off his debt. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Tessa goes to the hospital to get birth control medicine, but the doctor tells her she doesn't need it because of issues with her cervix that would make it hard to conceive. Hardin talks to his dad about transferring to Seattle. His dad suggests waiting until he graduates in 2 months to be part of his achievement. Hardin agrees and talks about his mom's upcoming wedding. His dad says she'll be happy with the man she's marrying, Mike, back in Seattle. Hardin goes to an event hosted by Vance and tells Tessa he's planning to move there later. He talks to Vance, who questions why he isn't attending his mom's wedding. Hardin says he doesn't want to involve Tessa in his old life by taking her to the wedding. Vance advises him to trust Tessa, as she doesn't make him feel bad about his past. Hardin and Tessa go to the wedding. Tessa gets close to Trish quickly, but Hardin keeps his distance. During the night, Hardin can't sleep and goes to get water. He catches his mom having intimate moments with Vance. Furious, he starts punching Vance until Tessa stops him. Trish's wedding happens the next day at the event. Kimberly talks to Tessa and reveals she knows about Vance's cheating but can't stay mad at him because she loves him. Meanwhile, Hardin goes to a bar with Vance, and they talk about the previous night. Vance reveals to Hardin that he's his biological father. Kimberly tells Tessa the same thing. Overwhelmed by this news, Hardin storms out, and Tessa follows him. They meet in the middle of the road, hug, and share a passionate kiss. Subscribe for more videos like this, enable notifications, and leave a like to support the channel.